Perfect.
I'm here.
So
Hi.
you can try sharing your screen.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes. Okay.
Perfect.
So you can share your screen and okay.
Yes, just 1 second. So thank you very much, Sebastian and Elisa, for your invitation. I'm sorry that I didn't make it to be there with you in person today. I'm also very sad that I'm going to miss the concert tonight. I also wanted to ask you if it's possible, if there is a streaming through which we can follow this concert. You know if there is,
Fortunately,
or
there is no
if
streaming,
I can
but
have
there will be a
some
recording. So you will be able
recording.
to
So
see the
maybe you
recording.
can send me.
Yes, yes,
I was
surely.
starting to look at this composer that is going to participate, and I was very interested. So yes, please go ahead and send me the recordings. I've also been listening with great interest to Alessandra's and Francesco's talks, and I think we have lots of points in common. So I hope we are going to be able to discuss. I'll try to speak 30 minutes. This way we have some time for the discussion. Can you see my screen now?
No, unfortunately, it's still not. Did you enable screen sharing?
Sure. You see me. Okay, but if I go here, maybe let me know. Sorry, my computer has been under the sun and it's very slow. Can you see it now?
Okay, now we are seeing it. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay, so I'm a philosopher, so I'll give you one more perspective. We heard an art historian, a physicist, and now philosophy. I like very much this interdisciplinary discussion that you're building, and I hope I can contribute. Today, I will try to tell you something about my research on art made with AI. And in particular, I will talk to you about two aspects. There is a more theoretical aspect that has to do with a book that I wrote. Here you see the English version, which came out first. It's called The Art of AI, Philosophical Keywords in 2024. And then I will tell you also something about a more experimental research that I did as a PI of a project, an annual project that we carried on at the University of Milan. It was about creating a theater show with different types of AI. So I'll try to talk to you about these two aspects. But please, if you don't understand something, please interrupt me. So the main question from which I started is more or less the same from which you are starting. Does AI represent a new chance for artists and more in general for our way of exploring and seeing the world? Or does it rather represent a danger? I think Alexandra told us already a lot about these dangers. We can go back to this a little bit. Sebastian talked about this aspect of deep neural networks, but it's worth recalling it. These types of AI don't follow in some way a set of predetermined rules, no? As it was the case with the previous type of AI, the so-called good old-fashioned AI, or symbolic AI, no? But rather, as you and also Francesco were explaining, they learn when they are put into contact with a large amount of data, which can be images, text, or sounds. And this has two consequences. a positive consequence, which is more autonomy, because in comparison to the old type of AI, now the AI learns to elaborate the data in a way that is partially autonomous from the human scientists. No? But there is also a danger as a consequence, because the AI learns, as we were saying, from our data, and therefore it tends also to reproduce all the schemes, the patterns, and also the biases that are inside this data. No? There are very important artists that have addressed this question, like Trevor Paglen or Hito Steyer, Kate Crawford, as well, as Alexandra was saying. Now, my idea is that faced with AI, art can do basically two things. And these two things are both important. I'm not saying that one is important and the other one is not. Art can expose the dangers of AI, like surveillance and biases, but this is the second use. It can also show that AI can be used in the opposite direction. It is to call biases into question. And this second use is the one that interests me the most. And I'll try to give you some examples, two examples, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about our theater experiment. So the first example is this one. I don't know if you know it already. It's called Aika. As you can see, it is a dog, a stuffed toy, and a robot. It was created by Mario Klingemann. Klingemann was one of the first artists who used generative AI starting from 1917. And Aika stands this name for artificially intelligent critical canine, because it is an art critic. As you can see, it has a monocle, no? And with this monocle, it is able to analyze the artworks. It moves in front of the artworks, and it analyzes them with its monocle. And then it elaborates some descriptions and judgments of these artworks, and it prints them through a printer that is located under its tail, as you can see. So what is the message of this work? Is it that all art critics are dogs or are producing only shit? Of course, it's not only this, no? It's a very playful experiment, but the message is deeper. And we can get something of this message, I think, if we pay attention to a character that Klingemann says inspired this experiment of Aika. This character is the electric monk. Some of you are physicists, and probably you know a writer called Douglas Adams. No, he wrote this I don't know in English, Galactic Guide for Guida Galattica per Autostoppisti. I don't know the title in English, but surely you know this one. And the electric monk is a character that comes from another novel, quite nice to read. I suggest you to read it. It's called Dirk Gently, Holistic Detective Agency. And the electric monk is it's a very strange character. I'll show you what it is. The electric monk is a machine, anthropomorphic machine, that was created on a remote planet in order to spare the inhabitants of the planet from a very particular type of work, that is the work of believing all things the world expected you to believe. Douglas Adams says a dishwasher is created in order to spare humans the labor of dishing washes. Video recorders are created in order to spare you the labor of watching films. So electric monks are created in order to spare you the labor of believing in what the world expects you to believe. So you see there is a very critical element here. How does this critical element fit into the performance of the Aika dog? If we go to, because, you know, in the novel, the meaning is not only that, okay, you should stop believing in anything, you should create the electric monks, and that would be better. Because in the novel of by Douglas Adams, what happens is that the inhabitants of the planet let the electric monks decide in their place, and the electric monks make a lot of disasters. So the meaning is not, okay, stop using your own thinking and let the electric monks decide. There is another meaning. And we can grasp this meaning if we go to the presentation, the Twitter account of Aika, because Aika has a Twitter account. And in this Twitter account, Aika writes, "Observe the world around you with intensity of a terrier tracking a scent." And if we go to the presentation of the project, we read, Klingemann writes, "In an age of visual overload and shrinking human attention, there seems to be an opening for machines that pay attention." So the meaning of Aika is exactly this. What Aika is telling us is, be careful, you have to go back to the moment in which you observe the world. So pay attention to the fact that when you go from the moment of observing the world to the moment of making judgments, sometimes, very often, these judgments turn out not very correct, as Aika's judgments. If you see the judgments that Aika writes, I asked them to Klingemann and I read them, they are full of hallucinations. For example, when there is a face in the painting, Aika can see a hat and so on. So Aika misjudges what it sees. But this is precisely the meaning of the work, because the errors and the hallucinations of Aika remind us that our own perception of the world is full of habits, of biases, of errors, of misjudgments. Before, Francesco said something very interesting, I think, because he was talking about the border between creativity and hallucination. What is the border between creativity and hallucination? Of course, hallucination and error is not in itself creative, but it can become creative when it leads the humans to call into question their own way of representing the world. So I'll try to give you another example. The other example is Sofia Crespo. She's an artist from Argentina, and she's carrying out a very interesting project since a few years that is that of representing nature through AI. Alexandra earlier was saying it is not enough to represent nature through AI in order to say that AI helps us to be sensitive to nature and to its needs. I agree with this, but maybe you can use AI to represent what we don't know of nature and what we don't take care of. And this is what Sofia Crespo tries to do. I will try to tell you how. I will show you a project that is called Critically Extant. Here it is on the walls of Times Square, but it was displayed on Instagram, first of all. In this project, Sofia Crespo asked the AI to represent a certain number of endangered species, so very rare animals that in some way are threatening to be extincted. And she said, okay, please represent for me these animals and do it through the information that you can find online. The AI was faced with this task, but online it could not find many representations of these animals because these are endangered species. They are very rare animals. And therefore, you know, Francesco and Sebastian told you the AI needs a lot of information in order to learn to represent things. So it didn't learn completely to represent these animals, and it made a lot of mistakes, and it produced these strange animals that you can see here. This is one of my favorites. What is interesting in these animals? It is not interesting only that they are hallucinated, that they are strange. This is not enough. What is important is that their errors, here you have this mouse that is so nice, I think. These errors that the AI makes has a very, very important meaning, because these errors tell us that we don't know everything about nature. We think that we represent nature online and on our social networks and everywhere, but we always represent the same aspects of nature. We represent very well horses or nice dogs and so on, but we don't know anything about the parotid deer mouse or any of these endangered species. So what these strange animals tell us is that there are aspects of nature that we have to learn to pay attention to. And maybe if we do this, we will also be able to take care of these aspects. So again, you see the question here is that there are some borders of our usual way of knowing and representing the world that are called into question through the errors of artificial intelligence. So it is not the errors alone that are creative. AI alone, this is something I think, maybe we can discuss this, but I think that AI alone is not creative. What is creative is the possibility of using these errors and these different ways that in which AI elaborates the incoming data in order to discover something new about ourselves and our world and our way of representing the world. So this was the second example. Now I'll tell you something about my our experiment, because it's not only mine. We were a team. Now it's finished. Maybe it will be exhibited again in September. I don't know, but the representation was in May in Milan. A representation of this theater show. It was an annual project funded by the University of Milan, and it was called the GP Theater. And the goal of GP Theater was to produce a theater show to investigate what? To investigate the role that the AI is having inside the university. So how the rise of generative AI is being received within our university context. This was the first aim. And secondly, what role it can have within the creative process of a theater. Why theater? This is interesting for me to tell, because one of the important features of generative AI in the last times is that it happens through dialogue. No, prompting is dialogue. So we ask the AI questions, we receive answers, and we ask other questions. So my starting question was, what does this dialogue have to do with philosophical dialogue on the one hand, and with theater dialogue on the other hand? What is this dialogue? Is it dialogue? Can we call it dialogue? And what does it have to do with theater and with philosophy? So this is why I chose theater. And I involved two colleagues, one from contemporary literature, Luca Daino, and another one from computer science, Matteo Zignani. And we worked together at this show, which was very, very fun. And this had 2 stages. I'm nearly done. I will tell you only something more about this project. The first stage was to let a number of colleagues from the University of Milan interact with ChatGPT and collecting these interactions. So we went to visit different colleagues of the university from different disciplines with Matteo's computer, and we gave them Matteo's computer, and we said, please, can you interact with ChatGPT? Can you ask ChatGPT something about your subject, or something that you wish, something that doesn't have anything to do with your subject at all? And it was a very, very beautiful stage of the process, because every colleague had a different feeling towards generative AI. There were colleagues that were like, no, I don't want this in my research field at all. And there were colleagues who were more open. The most frequent thing that happened was that they were correcting ChatGPT, like a kind of bad student. No, here you're wrong. I can lead you to make mistakes and so on. And so what happened is that for us, ChatGPT, in our imagination, became a student who was looking for his PhD advisor, so thesis, not PhD, thesis advisor, and therefore he was knocking on different university classes, on the doors of different university scholars, asking for a thesis advisor. And he was treated not very well most of the times, but some other times the result was better, and the professor and the student could talk. So this was really the subject that came out of it. And then we had to transform these interactions into theater scenes. So we gave ChatGPT these interactions, and we said, okay, ChatGPT, please transform this interaction into a theater scene. This was very difficult. I must say that if we didn't have Matteo, the computer scientist, it would have been impossible, because we really had to understand how to give ChatGPT the prompt in order to do this. And I'm not telling you what Matteo found out. Maybe we can discuss this later, but he had to think a lot, and then he found the right prompt in order to ask ChatGPT to transform these interactions into scenes that were in some way agreeable, that could be read and listened by the public. And this was the work that we did. And at the end, what happened is that 2 other people joined the project. Of course, we had, these are the names. So we had a theater director, he was Paolo Bignamini, and we had a dramaturg, not a dramaturg, but a playwright, Giulia Selta. And this very young playwright, Giulia, she's incredible, but she never worked with AI, so she was not very happy. She said, why should AI write plays? AI cannot substitute human players. So she had in mind all these kind of objections that are very good objections. And I was trying to tell her, okay, Giulia, you don't have to think that the AI is going to write the play. You are going to play with AI in order to write the play. You play together. And she was not very open to this until 2 other people joined the project. And these 2 other people, you can see them here, were Massimo Balestrini from Accademia di Belle Arti di Verona. He's an artist working with generative AI. And he did the scenographies for our play. And then also, these are some of the scenographies. you see they are full of hallucinations. And now I'll try to tell you something about this maybe. But, and also Mattia Merlini joined the project. He's a young musician. He was working with the musicology professor that interacted with ChatGPT during the first phase of the project, Maurizio Corbella. And what happened was that then when Maurizio and ChatGPT started to interact, Maurizio started to ask ChatGPT, if you had a play in which there was a student asking for a thesis, but the student is not really human, and but the public doesn't know this, and what music would you produce? And ChatGPT started to give suggestions about the music that could be produced. And these suggestions, of course, it was written suggestions, were taken by Mattia, that you see here, and used to produce music with AI. And it was really, really good. We liked it a lot. So when Giulia, the playwright, saw the pictures produced by Massimo and heard the music produced by Mattia, she changed. She thought, okay, I can play with AI too. I can do it. And she started to chat with ChatGPT about the text of the play. And so the text came out, and so came out, also the show came out. I'm not saying that it's an incredible work of art, but it was very, very fun. And this, maybe the professors turned out to be even more crazy than they were at the beginning, because ChatGPT really depicted very crazy professors. But it was a lot of fun. And what we learned was, it was different things. I'll try to go to the conclusions. I think I have 5 minutes, no? So we learned different things. The first thing that we learn is that, this, of course, you know it already, but it was funny to know it this way. ChatGPT and the generative AI in general is sometimes has hallucinations that you don't even perceive, no? But when you notice this, then this can really become very, very interesting. For example, there was a scholar, an history scholar that interacted with ChatGPT, and she was studying an anarchist woman from the 19th century, Leda Raffanelli, and she was fond of this historical character, and she asked ChatGPT, do you know Leda Raffanelli? Of course, I know Leda Raffanelli. ChatGPT wrote a lot of things about her, and then it wrote, she was one of the first women to have tattoos. And our colleagues said, oh, this is so interesting, incredible discovery. Can you tell me more about these tattoos? And the more and more she asked, the more and more ChatGPT said, oh, I don't know. And then finally it said, I'm sorry, she didn't have tattoos. I was wrong. So this is very, very instructive for the way you can use generative artificial intelligence in order to do research, no? But on the other hand, it's also very inspiring because it made us understand to what point we scholars sometimes identify with historical characters we are studying, no? Another example was the one of this art professor. The art professor said, told ChatGPT, I'm an artist. I made this artwork in which me and my girlfriend stay naked at the entrance of the gallery, and the people has to pass through us. Could you depict this for me? And ChatGPT said, no, I can't. I cannot do this. And so there was a problem with that. No, you know that there are fixed limits, no, within these systems. So the professor said, okay, could you maybe depict me and my girlfriend in underwear? No, I'm sorry, I cannot do this. Could you maybe depict us with swimming costumes? No, I'm sorry, I cannot do this. At the end, ChatGPT produced the picture of these two people in swimming costumes, but as I was showing you, it inserted a wall among them. And it didn't admit that it inserted a wall, because we said, okay, come on, there is a wall between the two people. Take away the wall. What wall? No, there is no wall. So it was very, very funny. But I think the only moment, we learned a lot, but the moment in which this interaction became really, I'm a Benjaminian scholar, so, you know, I use with a lot of, I'm very cautious to use this adjective creative, because Benjamin writes in the work of art in the age of its mechanical reproduction that when we talk of genius or creativity, there is a risk, and the risk is that we fetishize these concepts, no? And this is what Alexandra was saying. I think it doesn't do only with the economic part, it has to do with the idea of creativity in itself, in the sense that it has not to become something absolute, no? Creativity is useful if it is conceived as something that calls into question what we already know. Someone or something is never definitively creative, but we can use things or representations in a creative way, in the sense very near to critical, in the sense that we use it to call into question what we already know. So the last example that I wanted to leave you with is this one. It's a theater company, and with this I close. A theater company called Improbotics. I'm going to watch their performance in Edinburgh this summer. Finally, I got the ticket, because until now I know them only through online materials. And they do something very interesting, because they let humans and AI improvise together on the scene. And what is interesting is that in the last experiments that they are making, there are many actors, and all these actors have earplugs in their ears, and they all improvise all together, but just one of them reads the lines that the AI is creating in that moment. And the public doesn't know which of them is doing this, but they have to understand. And this is very funny, because it's not impossible to understand, because the lines, improvising is very difficult, no? And the lines that the AI is creating are very often not quite right, no? They are not completely in tune with the situation. So the task of the actor who is performing these lines by the AI is to give meaning and sense to these strange sentences. And this is an incredible example, I think, because as you see from this quotation, the actor, the performer that reads the AI lines becomes a cyborg. They write the inventors of the robotics. He becomes a cyborg, but it's a very curious type of cyborg, because it's a cyborg in which, if you think of cyborg, you always think of this fusion between machine and human body, that was very popular in the 90s, and about which Donna Haraway, for example, wrote very important things. But in this case, the cyborg has a different characteristic, because the distance between the AI and the human is not cancelled at all. It's exactly because the the sentences of the AI are so strange and so different, similar but also different, that the performer's task becomes so interesting. And so my idea, this is why I close with this slide. In this slide, you see the inventor of improbotics writes, improvisation is about risk, challenge, and cooperation. Improvisers take on seemingly impossible tasks through their open mind and surprise themselves. No? So why do I leave you with this slide? Because I think that this dialogue that is emerging between human and AI is really a kind of improvisation. It needs improvisation because it needs that the human puts himself or herself completely into question inside this dialogue in order to be able to reach something interesting from this dialogue. And this is not easy. If you talk to ChatGPT, we saw it while we were creating our show for GP Theater, you get a lot of stereotypes, a lot of things you already know. But only if you put yourself completely into question with your body and your research for meaning, in that case, I think the errors and the hallucinations of the AI can disclose for you something interesting. So this is my contribution. I will stop here.
Thanks for the very nice talk. Yeah. So there are questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. Can you hear me? Does that work?
Yeah, very well.
Okay,
very well.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have two questions. The first one, so in the literature on AI art, you very often read the thesis that this is to be understood along the lines of something like concept art, like what Sol LeWitt did. And it kind of seems to fit with a lot of the examples that you were showing. So I was just wondering what your thoughts about this thesis would be. So that's the first question. And then the second question is more about the Aika, the little dog, because I was a little bit confused by this because it kind of seems to imply that observing art is something objective. So it seems to fit very well with objective judgments about art, whereas a lot of philosophers think that judgments about art are at least not wholly objective. So there's always this more subjective side of them, something about feeling and stuff, but also about maybe going beyond what can be seen objectively. So something like reflecting, associating and stuff. And that little dog seems to imply that it's all about seeing correctly and not about hallucinating. And I was a little bit confused about that. So I was wondering what your thoughts about that would be.
Thanks. Very interesting questions. So the question about conceptual art, it depends. I would, it's too easy to answer, it depends. But there is a part of concept that you cannot avoid, I think, because this has to do with the fact that you must know that this artwork was made through AI. If you don't know this, you lose an important part. I try to explain you better. At the beginning of AI art, one of the criteria that was used in order to judge if it was good or not was the Turing test. No, one of the criteria was asking the people, do you think this was made from a human artist? And if they said yes, then the artwork was good. I think this is wrong, because what is interesting inside these artworks is precisely the fact that you can perceive that something is not quite right. they are also different from works made by human artists alone. No? One of my favorite was Fall of the House of Usher by Anna Riedler. And there you can see this disquieting character all the time, no? But this disquieting character, and this is precisely, I think, the point that gives sense to it, becomes important and meaningful once you know that the work was made through AI. And once the artist is trying to say something through this thing that you know. I don't like very much Anadol that Alexandra Naiver, I think. It's maybe we cannot say this in public because Anadol is very important, but he's not my favorite. I mean, because what I feel as missing here is exactly this element of meaning. So the error and the disquieting aspects becomes interesting when it acquires meaning. And this is a part of course, of it's not only conceptual, because the visual appearance of these works is very important. If you think of Anna Riedler's Fall of the House of Usher, it's the visual aspect is beautiful and it's very important. But the conceptual part is also necessary. So thank you, because you gave me the opportunity to tell this. About Aika, it would be, like you said, if Aika made the right statements. But the point is that Aika makes terrible statements. It really misjudges what it sees. So Aika is not an example of a good critic, or neither of a good perceiver, no? So what you ask yourself is, what is the sense of it? What is the sense of being such a crazy art critic? No, I think you can have a hint if you go back to that novel that I like very much by Douglas Adams. The electric monk at the beginning of the novel is on a hill, and he's a defective electric monk, and one of the ways in which this defect appears is the fact that this electric monk is convinced that the valley is pink. It is not. It's a normal valley. It's yellow and brown. But the electric monk got convinced that the valley is pink. So he behaves as if the valley is pink. So what is the point? The point is that you cannot stop there. You cannot be convinced that the valley is pink. You have to go back to the moment in which you observe the valley. This doesn't mean that there is a true image of the valley. It doesn't mean this. It means that you, as a living creature, in this case, have to go back to that moment and observe with your own eyes. So suspend your judgment for a moment. I'm not a phenomenologist. As I told you, I studied Benjamin and this tradition most of the time. But even in Benjamin, you have this moment in which the representation of the world has to encounter what exceeds this representation. And this is the moment of observation. And it is to this moment that the errors of AI point when they are used in this way. When they are used in this way, of course. I don't know if I answered correctly.
Okay, thanks you. Maybe there's time for one last question. Okay, there is one.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. It was very inspiring. I had one question about something you said at the beginning of the presentation of your project. Oh, beautiful. Sorry, we have to go out. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I wish I was there to discuss more with you guys.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.